The 1 and 1,000 Naughts. The fire in the hearth burns with a strange blue intensity tonight, fueled by a knot of ancient pine. Outside, the wind is a low growl, but the snow huddles thick and silent against the heavy timber walls. Even the air seems to be listening. The door creaks open, and Miri slips inside, her cloak dusted white. She stamps the snow from her boots, and something small and hard tumbles from her pocket, skittering across the stone floor. The children gather around it. It is a thin square of black glass, smooth and perfectly flat. Even in the dim firelight, it holds a dull, silent shine. Kyle crouches beside it and nudges it with a stick. "Is it alive?" Olin whispers. The object does nothing. No warmth, no smell, no breath, just cold. "Where did you find that?" the elder asks from her seat beside the hearth. "Black Ridge," Miri says. "In the old ruins. There were piles of them buried in the dirt." She lifts the shard carefully. They must have been valuable. Why else would there be so many? The elder studies it for a long moment, but she does not take it. Instead, she reaches into her wool sleeve and places something small on the hearthstone beside it, a single acorn. The children stare at the two objects lying side by side. One is smooth and shining like frozen water. The other is dull and brown, hardly worth noticing. "Which one is richer?" the elder asks quietly. Kyle snorts. "The glass, of course." The elder nods slowly. "That is what the ash-eaters believe, too." She leans closer to the fire, and her voice settles into the deep rhythm of the old stories. Long ago, when the skies were dim with chimney smoke and the rivers ran between cities of stone, the ash-eaters were the cleverest people the world had ever known. They could catch lightning in wires and trap voices inside silver stones. They built glowing boxes that remembered more words than 1,000 elders. They called these wonders their Naughts. Each Naught could hold 1,000 other things, songs, pictures, numbers, memories. The ash-eaters loved them for it. They filled their homes with humming glass and bright machines that never seemed to forget anything. At first, the Naughts were servants. They helped farmers count the harvest. They helped healers remember old medicines. They helped travelers find their way across the oceans. But slowly, something changed. The ash-eaters began to trust the Naughts more than the living world. When the soil grew tired, they studied numbers instead of the dirt. When the rivers shrank, they studied screens instead of the sky. They gathered more Naughts to solve every problem, and the Naughts multiplied. The cities grew brighter each year. Towers of glass rose higher and higher, filled with clever machines. The ash-eaters believed that if they gathered enough Naughts, they would never again fear hunger, darkness, or cold. But a strange thing happened. The towers grew brighter, yet the people grew colder. Their houses filled with silent machines, but their hearths burned lower each winter. The fields beyond the cities grew thin and tired. Fewer birds returned in the spring. The soil grew pale beneath their feet. Still, they gathered more Naughts, believing the next machine would solve the problem. Then one winter, the frost came earlier than anyone expected. The power grids froze. The humming machines fell silent. The towers of Naughts went dark all at once. The people huddled in their cold houses, surrounded by mountains of clever things that could no longer help them. They had thousands of Naughts, but none of them could grow bread. None of them could warm a child. None of them could bring the soil back to life. One morning, a small child walked through the silent streets carrying a clay pot. Inside the pot was a single green sprout, the last seed her grandmother had saved. The child knelt in the gray ash of the city square and pressed the seed into the frozen earth. The people laughed when they saw her. "What can one seed do?" they asked. "We had thousands of machines." But the seed did what living things have always done. It reached down, it reached up, it drank light and frost and rain. By spring, it had become a small tree. Birds came to rest on its branches. Insects returned to the soil around its roots. The ground softened and darkened, and slowly the people remembered something they had almost forgotten. 1,000 naughts are still nothing, but the one is everything. The elder reaches forward and finally touches the shard of ghost glass. It is colder than the stone beneath it. Then she picks up the acorn and presses it gently into Ellen's hand. "Close your fist," she says. Ellen obeys. After a moment she blinks in surprise. "It's getting warm." "Yes," the elder whispers, "because the sun is sleeping inside it." She nudges the ghost glass toward the scrap bucket beside the hearth. It lands with a thin, hollow clink. "Dead things can be clever," she says quietly, "but only living things can keep the world warm." The elder looks around at the children curled in their furs. "Remember this, little stitches. 1,000 naughts are still nothing, but the one is everything." The codex closes with a deep wooden thud.